The first time I noticed something was wrong, it was just a hunch. A small package I had been expecting wasn't on the porch when the delivery notification came through. At first, I thought maybe it had been delayed, or perhaps the driver left it with a neighbor by mistake. I shrugged it off, assuming it was just one of those things that happened. But then it happened again. And again. By the third time, I couldn't ignore the pit forming in my stomach. Someone was taking my deliveries right from my doorstep. I live in a tidy little suburban neighborhood where people wave while mowing their lawns and chat politely at the mailbox. It's the sort of place you assume is safe from petty theft. So the realization that one of my neighbors might be the culprit was both unsettling and infuriating. The truth revealed itself one afternoon when I happened to be home early from work. From behind my curtain, I watched a woman, someone I recognized from the HOA meetings, walk right up to my porch, snatch the cardboard box lying there, and stride off as if she owned it. Her name was Karen. And if there was ever a poster person for the stereotypical HOA Karen, she was it. The type who complained about kids riding bikes too fast, measured everyone's grass height, and sent passive-aggressive emails about holiday decorations. I'd always tried to stay out of her way, nodding politely during encounters, never engaging beyond small talk. But seeing her walk away with something that wasn't hers, bold as daylight, lit a spark inside me that I couldn't put out. At first, I wrestled with the usual reactions. Confront her directly, file a complaint with the HOA, or maybe even involve the police. But I knew how slippery people like her could be. She'd deny it, spin the story, maybe even accuse me of harassment. I could already hear her sharp voice declaring herself the victim. No, I thought, if I wanted to stop her, I'd have to be clever. That night, scrolling through videos online, I stumbled across a trend that made me grin. People were rigging glitter bombs, harmless contraptions designed to explode in a shower of colorful powder the moment someone opened a package. The videos were hilarious, showing porch pirates' shocked faces as shimmering clouds enveloped them. It was messy, embarrassing, and utterly harmless. Exactly the kind of justice I craved. I spent the next week designing my plan. The box I used was an old show box, sturdy enough to look like a legitimate delivery. I lined the inside with a simple spring mechanism and loaded it with fine, shimmering green glitter powder I'd ordered from a craft store. Not just a handful, pounds of it. Enough to coat a person head to toe. When I tested it in my garage, the glitter burst into the air in a sparkling cloud, sticking to everything it touched. I couldn't stop laughing. The morning I put the box out, my heart raced with nervous anticipation. Would it work? Would she take the bait? Or worse, would someone else grab it by mistake? I placed the package carefully on the porch, angling it so it was visible from the sidewalk. Then I set up my phone in a window to record the scene. Hours crawled by. I kept glancing out the window, ears straining for any sound on the front steps. Finally, in the early afternoon, I saw her. Karen, strutting confidently down the sidewalk, sunglasses perched on her nose, scanning like a hawk. She spotted the box instantly. Without hesitation, she walked up, looked around once, and scooped it up. My pulse spiked. This was it. She didn't even wait to get home. She tore into the box right there in my front yard. The second the lid opened, the glitter bomb ignited with a loud pop. A massive burst of neon green powder engulfed her in a shimmering explosion. She staggered back, coughing, her face, hair, and clothes instantly coated. Her horrified scream echoed down the street, sharp and shrill. She dropped the box, flailing her arms, as if that would shake off the fine dust clinging to her skin. The best part. A group of neighbors down the street happened to be out, chatting and enjoying the sunshine. They all turned just in time to see the spectacle. Phones came out, laughter erupted, and in an instant, Karen's humiliation was immortalized in photos and video clips. She looked like something out of a cartoon, glowing green and furious, glaring at everyone around her as though we were the ones who wronged her. I knew then that I'd made my point. It wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about balance. About showing someone who used intimidation and entitlement to get what they wanted that actions have consequences. That you can't just keep taking from others without expecting something to come back at you. But as I stood at my window, heart still racing, watching her storm off covered in glitter while neighbors tried, and failed, to contain their laughter. Another thought crossed my mind. Maybe this wasn't just about teaching her a lesson. Maybe it was a chance to shift the tone in the neighborhood itself. To remind people that kindness, respect, and honesty matter more than control, appearances, or petty power struggles. The glitter would wash away, sure, but the memory, the embarrassment, and hopefully, the reflection it sparked, those would linger. And for the first time in weeks, I felt peace knowing my porch was safe again. The neighborhood buzzed with whispers for days after the glitter bomb incident. It spread faster than gossip usually did in our quiet suburb, amplified by the photos and videos circulating in group chats. Everyone seemed to have seen the moment when Karen was blasted into a walking green spectacle. By the next morning, her name had become a punchline whispered between neighbors mowing their lawns, kids giggling on their bikes, and even the mailman who smirked as he handed me a stack of letters. What struck me wasn't just the humor. It was the shift in tone. For years, Karen had carried herself like a self-appointed enforcer, wielding HOA rules like weapons. People tolerated her out of convenience, sometimes out of fear. But now, her authority had been undercut in one dazzling explosion of glitter. Suddenly, she was the spectacle, not the sheriff. And though I should have felt victorious, the flicker of guilt was harder to shake than I expected. It hit me hardest when I saw her 2 days later. She had scrubbed herself clean, but faint traces of green shimmer still clung stubbornly to the edges of her hair and the fabric of her blouse. Glitter has a way of embedding itself into every surface, refusing to vanish completely. She walked stiffly down the street, shoulders squared, eyes darting like a predator searching for weakness. The air around her hummed with defensiveness, the kind that comes from humiliation. I half expected her to storm up my driveway, fists clenched, accusations ready. But she didn't. She just shot me a look, sharp enough to cut glass, and kept walking. For some reason, that unsettled me more than if she had yelled. It was the silence, the restraint, the unspoken message. This wasn't over. The tension simmered until the next HOA meeting. Karen showed up dressed immaculately, as if she could scrub the memory of glitter away with pressed slacks and pearls. Her voice carried its usual sternness as she rattled off reminders about parking violations, recycling bins, and lawn care. But I noticed something different. The room wasn't hanging on her words the way it used to. A few people stifled smiles when she spoke. One neighbor even whispered "Sparkle Queen" under their breath, and I caught the corner of Karen's mouth twitch before she forced her expression back into neutrality. When the meeting ended, people lingered in small groups, exchanging knowing glances. For once, Karen wasn't the center of control. She was the center of the joke. And while part of me relished that, another part wondered what I had really accomplished. That night, I found myself replaying the moment of the glitter bomb. Not with glee this time but with unease. Watching someone reduced to a spectacle had been satisfying in the moment, but it wasn't who I wanted to be. Justice was one thing, cruelty another. Had I crossed that line? The turning point came a week later when a knock rattled my door. I opened it to find a cardboard box sitting neatly on the porch. For a heartbeat, my chest tightened, afraid it was some kind of payback. But when I bent down, I noticed a note taped to the top. The handwriting was sharp, deliberate. Point made. Packages are safe. But don't think you've won. It wasn't signed, but it didn't need to be. I stood there holding the note, staring at the words, and something in me shifted. Beneath her defensiveness, I recognized something familiar. Pride clashing with embarrassment, dignity trying to salvage itself. She hadn't apologized, but she had stopped. Maybe that was enough. In the days that followed, the neighborhood slowly began to breathe differently. People were warmer, somehow lighter. Without Karen patrolling with constant criticism, kids played outside longer, neighbors chatted without glancing over their shoulders, and for the first time in years, block parties were being suggested again. It was as if her grip had loosened, and the whole place exhaled. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had a choice. I could leave it there, savor the victory, bask in the peace, or I could take a step further. Not with more tricks or pranks, but with something that might actually change the dynamic for good. So I did something unexpected. I left a package on her porch. Not rigged, not trapped, just a small wrapped box with a ribbon. Inside was a mug that read, "Glitter fades, but kindness sticks." Alongside it, a short note. "No hard feelings. Let's try to make this neighborhood better, for all of us." It was a risk. She could take it as mockery, throw it away, or worse. But as I placed it gently on her doorstep under the cover of dusk, I hoped it might bridge the chasm I had widened. The next morning, the package was gone. No note was left in return, no dramatic scene played out. Just an absence, quiet and uncertain. But later that week, at the community park, I noticed Karen sitting on a bench. For the first time in as long as I could remember, she wasn't scolding anyone. She was feeding ducks, alone, her shoulders less rigid than before. Something told me she had read the note. Maybe, just maybe, the glitter had cracked something open, not just her pride, but her walls. I didn't expect friendship. I didn't even expect warmth. But what I hoped for was respect, the kind that grows not from fear but from understanding. And in that small shift, in that fragile possibility, I found something far greater than the satisfaction of revenge. It wasn't about winning. It was about reminding both of us that in the end, kindness has more staying power than any glitter bomb ever could. The weeks that followed brought with them an unfamiliar quiet. No more missing deliveries, no sudden complaints tucked under doormats, no HOA rule reminders slipped into inboxes at midnight. For the first time since I moved into the neighborhood, life felt normal, peaceful, even. The absence of tension was almost startling. And though I couldn't say for certain if Karen had truly changed or was merely retreating to lick her wounds, one fact stood undeniable. The constant unease that had hung in the air had lifted. Neighbors noticed it too. People smiled more easily, conversations lingered on sidewalks, and a spontaneous barbecue cropped up one Saturday evening without the usual layer of disapproving stares. The sound of laughter carried across neatly trimmed lawns, and for once, the neighborhood resembled what it was always meant to be, a community. Still, Karen lingered in the background like a storm cloud that hadn't quite decided whether it was done raining. She wasn't hostile, but she wasn't warm either. She avoided direct interaction, her glances guarded, her words clipped. Yet, there was something about her posture, less rigid, less self-important, that suggested she was learning, even if reluctantly. Then came the day I least expected. I was in the front yard trimming hedges when Karen approached. My stomach knotted instinctively, half preparing for confrontation. She wore her usual neat attire, though her shoes were scuffed, and the faintest trace of glitter still glimmered on the cuff of her sleeve, a stubborn reminder of that infamous day. She stopped a few feet from me, crossing her arms. "You're the one who left that mug," she said flatly. It wasn't a question. I nodded. Yeah. I thought, maybe it was time to move forward. Her eyes narrowed, searching mine for sarcasm. For once, I held steady. No jokes, no smirk, no edge. Just honesty. She exhaled sharply, almost a laugh, though not quite. "You embarrassed me. In front of everyone." "You embarrassed yourself," I replied gently. "But I wanted to give you a chance to rebuild. Glitter fades, after all." For a moment, she just stared. The silence stretched taut, the kind of pause where something important teetered on the edge of being said. Finally, her shoulders sank, just slightly. "I went too far," she admitted, each word dragged out like it cost her something. "I thought I was keeping order. But maybe I was just controlling everything." That was the closest to an apology I would ever get. And honestly, it was enough. From that day on, something subtle shifted. Karen didn't transform overnight into the neighbor of the year, but she softened. Instead of barking at kids for riding bikes too fast, she started waving to them. Instead of firing off scolding emails, she asked questions in meetings. And while she never publicly acknowledged the glitter bomb incident, the change in her demeanor was its own unspoken confession. The neighborhood thrived under this new balance. We organized a block cleanup, planted flowers around the entrance sign, and even hosted a small holiday parade for the kids. Where Karen had once been the obstacle, now she was, strangely, the one helping organize logistics, her sharpness redirected into something useful. People respected her, not because they feared her, but because she was finally contributing instead of controlling. For me, the glitter bomb became less about the prank and more about what it represented. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't humiliation. It was a catalyst, a spark that disrupted a cycle of negativity and forced reflection. It taught me that sometimes, the path to kindness isn't smooth. It's messy, unexpected, and a little uncomfortable. But it's worth it. One evening, as I sat on my porch watching fireflies flicker in the warm summer air, I noticed Karen walking her dog. She glanced my way, hesitated, then gave a small, almost reluctant smile. I smiled back, and for the first time, there was no bitterness behind it. Just a quiet acknowledgement. We had both grown from the ordeal. The lesson was clear. Kindness doesn't always look like softness. Sometimes it looks like standing up, setting boundaries, and holding others accountable. Sometimes it takes boldness, even creativity, to break through walls of pride and stubbornness. But if at the end of it all, you can turn conflict into growth, you've done something worthwhile. That's the real glitter bomb, not the sparkling powder that explodes in the air, but the reminder that respect, empathy, and accountability can transform even the most stubborn of hearts. And so, to anyone reading this, here's my challenge. When faced with conflict in your own life, ask yourself, what's your version of a glitter bomb? How can you stand firm, be clever, and still choose kindness in the end? Don't settle for resentment or silence. Choose action. Choose creativity. Most of all, choose a solution that leaves the door open for change. Because glitter fades, but kindness sticks forever. Months passed, and the glitter bomb had become nothing more than a story neighbors chuckled about during late-night bonfires and Saturday yard sales. Its memory was etched into the fabric of the community, not as an act of cruelty but as the spark that rewrote the neighborhood's culture. But what struck me most was how quietly, almost imperceptibly, Karen began to change. It started with small acts. She stopped sending those curt, all-caps emails about trash cans left at the curb. Instead, she sent reminders that sounded almost polite. She even added a thank you at the end, though the words seemed to stumble onto the page as if she'd wrestled with them first. Then, one afternoon, I noticed her kneeling beside a neighbor's garden, helping plant marigolds. For someone who used to frown at dirt under her fingernails, that was nothing short of revolutionary. The children noticed, too. Where they once rode their bikes in constant fear of a sharp rebuke, now they zoomed down the street freely, their laughter rising above the pavement. And sometimes, Karen even clapped or cheered them on, though she tried to disguise it with a cough or a wave of her hand. I won't pretend she became perfect. Old habits don't vanish overnight, and every so often, a trace of her sharpness resurfaced. But instead of dominating conversations or ruling the HOA with an iron fist, she learned to pause, to listen, to allow space for others' voices. Slowly, respect replaced fear. One evening, during another HOA meeting, something remarkable happened. A younger neighbor raised concerns about adding a community garden in one of the unused green spaces. Normally, Karen would have shot down such a suggestion with an avalanche of regulations. Instead, she leaned forward, tapped her pen thoughtfully, and said, "That could be a good idea. Let's talk logistics." The room fell silent in shock. Then, one by one, people joined in, brainstorming, planning, envisioning a shared project. That garden became a reality by summer, a vibrant patch of life that drew neighbors together. Tomatoes, peppers, herbs, and flowers flourished, but more importantly, so did the sense of unity. And though no one said it aloud, everyone knew, Karen's approval had made it possible. Watching her water a row of basil plants one afternoon, I realized something profound. Sometimes, the people who seem the hardest, the most difficult, are the ones carrying the heaviest burdens. They mask insecurity with control, loneliness with criticism, fear with dominance. Maybe Karen hadn't stolen those packages simply out of greed or entitlement. Maybe, deep down, she wanted connection, to feel like she had something others didn't. It didn't excuse her actions, but it explained them. And explanation is the first step toward empathy. One Saturday, as the garden bustled with chatter, Karen approached me. She looked older somehow, but softer. "I owe you," she said plainly. I raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For stopping me. for reminding me that I can't bully my way into feeling important. Her voice cracked, just slightly. I hated you for it at first. But maybe it was the best thing anyone could have done. For the first time, I saw not the infamous HOA Karen, but simply a woman, flawed, proud, human, standing vulnerable in the sunlight. I nodded, choosing not to gloat, not to remind her of the humiliation. Instead, I said, "We're neighbors. That's what we do, we help each other, even when it's uncomfortable." From then on, our interactions carried a new tone. We weren't friends exactly, but we were allies in something bigger, building a community that thrived on respect rather than fear. By fall, the garden became the heart of the neighborhood. Families shared meals made from its produce, children learned how to plant seeds and watch them grow, and seasonal festivals brought everyone together. And at the center of it, often guiding, sometimes scolding but always contributing, was Karen. She still had her sharp edges, but now they were tools, not weapons. The true transformation revealed itself one crisp evening during the community's first harvest celebration. Lanterns glowed, tables overflowed with food, and laughter rippled through the air. Karen stood at the front, holding a basket of apples, her once feared voice now steady with warmth as she welcomed everyone. "I used to think rules made a neighborhood strong," she admitted, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. "But I see now, it's people. It's kindness. It's choosing to respect each other." She paused, then added with the faintest smirk, "And sometimes, it takes a little glitter to learn that lesson." The crowd erupted with laughter, not mocking but celebratory. In that moment, the glitter bomb became less of a humiliation and more of a story of redemption, a shared turning point. As I stood there, watching Karen laugh alongside neighbors who once avoided her, I realized something vital. Conflict doesn't have to end in division. With creativity, courage, and kindness, even the harshest relationships can transform into something meaningful. And maybe that's the greatest legacy of the glitter bomb. Not the spectacle, not the viral laughter, but the reminder that change is possible. That people, no matter how difficult, can grow when given a chance. That kindness, though sometimes messy and imperfect, has the power to reshape not just individuals but entire communities. So if you ever find yourself facing someone like Karen, someone who tests your patience, pushes your boundaries, or takes more than they give, remember this. You don't have to fight cruelty with cruelty. You can be clever. You can be bold. But above all, you can choose kindness as your final act. Because glitter washes away, but the seeds of respect and empathy, once planted, grow into something lasting. And now, I'll ask you the same question I asked myself. What's your glitter bomb? What creative, kind, and firm action can you take to transform your own conflicts into opportunities for growth? Don't just dream of a better community. Build it, one act of kindness at a time.